So I'm just going to give you a really quick overview of the dashboard builder and how you can build like a really simple one. Some of the new WFD classification data just to show you how to build a really simple dashboard that looks like this, so you could explore the data in a bit more detail. So if you go to when you're in your contents page in ArcGIS Online, and if you just click on create and choose dashboards, that'll open the dashboard builder for you. So it just asks you to enter a title. And you need some tags. Just put Cabba in there. You can add a summary if you want and choose where you want to save it. And then it will open the builder for you. So you'll see this blank dashboard screen when you first go into it. And then to add the different elements, you just click on the little plus sign on the header bar and you can see the different options that are available to you for the different elements. So we'll start with a header. So this then opens the header pane, so you can play around with the size a little bit. It defaults to the title of your dashboard, but you could change it. So if you wanted to just change it to add 2019, you could do. You can add a subtitle if you want to. You can add a logo in. So if I just grab the URL for our logo, can just paste that in there and it'll add a logo. You can add a link to your website if people click on the logo. You can play around with the colours a bit for the background, and you can do things like add a background image if you want to. When you're happy with how your header or whichever element you're doing looks, you just click on done. So unlike the story maps, the new story maps, there isn't an autosave on the dashboard. So just keep remembering to click save as you've added the different elements so you don't lose anything. So we'll now, if you want to go back into any of the elements at any time and update them, if you just hover over them and in the top left, you see the little bar. If you hover over that and then you can click on the configure settings wheel and it'll just take you back in so you could re-edit that element. So we're now just going to add a map to our dashboard. So I'm going to choose this WFD classifications map. And you can choose a few of the settings for how you want your map to appear, whether you want people to be able to click on it and view pop-ups, if you want to add a legend, if you want people to be able to turn on and off layers, add a search, zoom in and out. If you click on the general, you can add a title to appear above your map on the dashboard. So we might want to add in 2019 ecological status, bold. You could add in a description if you want, and you can change your colours and things again if you want. So that's loaded in our map now. So now we're going to add in another element. We're going to add in a pie chart this time to show the proportion of water bodies that are at each of the different status classifications. So we're going to choose, you can choose which layer in your map you want the pie chart to pull data from. So I'm going to choose the WFD 2019 ecological status. And we're going to make sure that the categories are in grouped values. And then in the category field, we're going to look for the ecological status in the drop-down list. And you can see now it's drawing the example template in the windows. You can see what your pie chart's beginning to look like. We're going to leave the statistic as the count of water bodies in each category, but you can see if you had different data, you might want to use a different statistic, such as the sum or the average, for example. And we're going to click on the sort, and we're going to choose to sort by the statistic and descending, just so our pie chart's now got the largest category, moderate water bodies first, moving down to the smaller ones, making the pie chart a little bit easier to read. And then we can now play around with how the pie chart displays a little bit. So if we click on chart on the side, we can change the inner radius, so create more of a sort of donut pie chart. I quite like leaving the hover text on, so that means when you sort of hover over, you get the values, the number of water bodies and the percentage as well. You can play around with the labels, so at the minute you'll see they're showing the percentage of water bodies in each category, but we could change that to the value if we want. Or you can just get rid of the labels and just leave it so that people hover over the pie chart, which is maybe a bit of a cleaner view. You can also add a legend if you want. So you could have the legend showing the categories by percentage, or you could choose value, so the number of water bodies instead. And you can play around with a little bit. At the minute you can see the percentages have got decimal points in the format. If you just wanted a whole number, you could just change the number format there at the bottom. Just click on the refresh, and now it's just showing the percentages in whole numbers. So if you click on slices, this is where you can change the colour. So I'm just going to quickly change the colours back to the more standard WFD classification colours. And in general, again, I'm going to give the pie chart a title. Let's put that in the centre. And again, you can just sort of resize it. Choose one of the headings, change the colour if you want to. And you'll have noticed that on a lot of the examples, you see this sort of text in the bottom, which tells you the last time the chart was updated. So that's quite good for, I guess, things like that plastics dashboard that Catherine showed you, or the Riverfly ones where you maybe want to see when it was last updated, so you know when the data's from. But something like this one that's using more static data, you can just turn that off if you don't want it to be shown. And then when you're happy with how your graph's looking, again, just click done and it'll place your pie chart. So I'm now going to add an indicator widget, which will just show the number of water bodies that the dashboard's pulling data for. So again, I'm going to choose the ecological status layer, so you can see the number of water bodies nationally that we have. And again, I'm going to use the count statistics. I just want to know the total number of water bodies, but again, you could change that statistic if you wanted to. And you can add a bit more text to the indicator just to explain what it's showing. So I'm just going to add number of water bodies. Let's put in selection. We can do a bit of editing here and change the colours if you want to on the different text. And you can also add a little icon to your indicator, maybe just to give a bit more information about what your indicator's about. So let me just pick this water droplet and change the colour there. So again, when you're happy with your indicator, if you just click done, it'll add it. And now that you've added a few elements, you can begin to play around with the layout a bit. You probably don't want this indicator being so huge. So if you just hover over the top left, and you can drag the item and dock it below the pie chart. You might want to make the map a bit larger and drag this down. So you can begin to play with the look and feel of your dashboard. And at the minute, our dashboard's just pulling data for the whole of the country. But the thing that you can see that you could do with the Riverfly ones was you can sort of filter the data by site locations and things. So we might want to add a selector to our dashboard. So you can do this in two places. You can either add a side panel and add a selector from there, or what I'm just going to show you is you can add your selector widget into the header. So again, just hover over the top left and click on this one with the sort of 4 little squares to add a category selector. And we're going to choose our categories from grouped values, again, just from that same layer. And I want it to filter it by CABA catchment. So I'm going to search through the layer list until we find CABA catchment. So you can now see in the drop down, it's started adding the catchment names there. So we're just going to increase the maximum number of categories so that it covers the number of choices that we've got in our list. And I'm going to leave it sorted ascending in alphabetical order. And just add a little label, so give people a bit of instruction about what they're choosing from the selector. So let's just say, choose your CABA catchment. And you can choose to set your selector so people can either just choose one option or they can choose more than one. So I'm going to allow people to choose multiple CABA catchments because they might want to filter that. So for example, in the Mersey, you've got 5 different CABA catchments, so you might want to be able to select them all and pull the data for all of those. So when you've got a lot of options like we have in this one, it's best to use a drop-down menu. I'm just going to increase that display threshold. And it's also a good idea to switch on the none option. You'll have seen that was on the Riverfly dashboard. So that just allows you to go back to the whole database if you want to. So I'm just going to label it as being all catchments. And now that you've got your selector, what you want to do is you want to tell the dashboard that if people make a selection using that, you want it to update the different elements in your dashboard. So if you click on Actions and go to Add Target, and we're going to ask it to update the pie chart, update the indicator, and also update the map with the ecological status layer when people make a selection through the widget. So if we just click Done, we should now have our selector there. And if we click down, and maybe if we choose the Alt Crossings catchment, you can see it's now updated the data in the dashboard for that. But we might want to go back and edit that selector. So we're sort of mainly all from the northwest here today. So we might only want it to allow it to choose catchments in the northwest. So if we hover over the selector and go back into the configure widget, we could add a filter to our selection. So this time in the filter, we're going to write our query expression. So we want it to filter by the river basin district if it's equal to the northwest. And so we don't miss out the Eden, we'll also say, or if the river basin district names Solway Tweed, we'll have it in our list. And then if we click Done, it should hopefully have updated now. So now you can see that in our choices, we've just got options from the northwest. So if we wanted to click on a few of those, we might want to choose the Upper Mersey, the Alt Crossings, Lower Mersey, Irwell, and the Weaver Gowie, so that you've got all the catchments there in the Mersey, and you can see now how it's sort of updated your widgets. You can play around with the sort of settings of the dashboard a bit. If you click on settings, you can change the theme to a dark theme, and you can sort of play around with the colours to maybe match the branding for your trust or your CABA partnership if you want to. So you can see it's just changed the overall theme there. So that was really just a bit of a quick sort of overview of how to add the different elements. There's a lot more you can do with it. So for example, for this one, you might have wanted to add the overall status and the chemical status as well, and maybe some of the individual elements in the WFD classification. And it depends how your data is structured in your initial sort of spreadsheet or data layer as to sort of what options you choose when you're drawing the different graphs. But it's very easy just to play around with them and get the sort of data to appear how you want it to appear. So that was just a very quick overview of